You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Yes, indeed. Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. I am your host, Koku. Glad to be here with you guys. Let me just get my mic set up right here. Yeah, glad to be with you guys today. I see that Ogun is in the chat already saying peace, family, and Revolutionary Matron from the Learning Curve podcast is here as well, saying greetings, fam. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you. Before we get into this paper, and this paper is going to be kind of interesting today. It's not a research paper, it's an article by Dwayne Wong. I thought it was a timely article to read. If you've been following the content on KWAZ Radio, particularly the Learning Curve podcast, there's been a lot of fire content has been going down. I was privileged to be a part of it. Recently, the matron did a live stream that lasted 12 hours, which is a record on KWAZ Radio, and it was bumpy. It was great at times, it was bumpy at times, and it's something you guys should tune into. The matron has turned some pertinent parts into clips that you could find on her channel as well as on the KWAZ Radio YouTube channel. Make sure to share those clips. If you share something that's 12 hours long, people won't listen, but share the clips that the matron is putting out, because trust me, it's a worthwhile listen. The whole listen is worthwhile, but share the clip so folks will get a piece of what went down during the live stream. One of the things that was talked about in the live stream, number one, we had some continental Africans from East Africa talking about and arguing in support of the notion that colonization was good for Africans. It gave them technology. If you want to hear my initial reaction, go check out the Learning Curve with the Revolutionary Matron. You'll hear all of it. And then along the line, because of that statement, a few people were bringing up the fact of Africans didn't come to save those of us who were kidnapped, enslaved, and transported to the West. So this article by Omowale or Dwayne Wong should shed some light on this question. Before I get into the reading though, I just want to remind you guys that this show, the Bitter Medicine Podcast, is a part of a podcast network. There are other shows on the network you should be tuned into, and you are being invited to listen to.
This is D Webb with the Harsh Reality Podcast, asking you to tune in where we tackle the news of the day that affects our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where Black problems are addressed with Black solutions.
Greetings, fam. Tune in to The Learning Curve with me, the Revolutionary Matron on KWAZ Radio.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Yes, indeed. Make sure you check out all of those shows on KWAZ Radio. So let me ask this question in the I'm going to set up a poll in the chat. That I want folks to answer this question for me. Simple question that I'm going to put up. You guys could respond to that poll whenever you see it. I'm trying to figure out how to go about doing the show in the near future in a way that works best for everyone. Right now, I'm on the Discord, and if you'd like, you could hop on air, and your voice can be heard even during this show. I'm thinking about moving over to StreamYards, where I could more seamlessly have people come on and speak their piece, add their 2 cents to the conversation. If you're here with me live, please hit the like button, and if you listen to the playback, hit the like button as well. All right, all the likes help these small channels such as mine. Okay, are we ready for this reading? This should be a decent reading. It's a regular article. It's really about, a few minutes read, but we're gonna do some other things with it, and we're gonna have a little conversation about this. So again, the title, Why Didn't Africans Rescue Us? By Dwayne Wong, also known as Omowale. You guys are familiar with Dwayne Wong on Twitter, I'm certain, right? You guys should be familiar with Dwayne on Twitter. If you're not following me on Twitter, you could find me at BitterMeds, BITTERMEDZ, right? At BitterMeds. You should follow me. Join that Pan-African ecosystem that we that we have on Twitter. Me, the Pro-Black Perspective, the Revolutionary Matron, the Harsh Reality Podcast, guys like Dwayne Wong, etc. are all kind of connected. Exports to Mark, all of us are kind of connected on Twitter, Kevin Carre 42, etc. So you guys should hop on as well. Ogun, are you on Twitter? Are you connected to me and like the Pro-Black Perspective and the Matron and stuff on Twitter? Because sometimes you guys have a different Twitter name from, from other things that you do. And so I never know. So let me know if you're on Twitter, yes or no. Right? Let's get to this reading. See, YouTube is messing with the stream numbers already, huh? Interesting. So one common complaint that I have been noticing a lot recently is a complaint that Africans on the continent did little to rescue those of us who were enslaved here in the Americas. The people who make such a claim do not seem to understand or appreciate how destructive the slave trade was in Africa. The African states which were entangled in the slave trade were struggling for their own survival. Aside from this, there were other factors why Africans were not in a position to rescue those who were enslaved in the Americas. Now, if you study your history, you'll know that this opening paragraph is absolutely spot on. It wasn't like the continental Africans in West Africa in particular were just chilling, counting money as our ancestors were enslaved and transported away from the continent to the Americas, right? That's the image some would like to give you, that Africans were, and by the way, I'm not saying that Africans weren't wrong. In fact, if you listen to that live stream, the big one, the major one that the Learning Curve had recently, that late night show. One of the things one BB Rodriguez in the chat room kept saying, and I acknowledge this, is that West Africa does need to atone in a few different ways, and there's a few different ways they can atone, right, for what was done there, right? Because we cannot pretend that Africans didn't participate, Africans on the continent in West Africa didn't participate in the slave trade. And what's kind of crazy about it is, too, I'm kind of disheartening, is that the participation was for nothing much except some nigger trinkets that they got. And that's what we got to be real about. And we got to be real about the fact that today we still have Africans who just respond to some nigger trinkets. They'll sell you out. They'll sell out our people for next to nothing. Right? Let's continue. We must first understand that in many cases, Africans simply did not know what became of the captives. Few knew about the Middle Passage and the slave plantations. A very common belief among Africans was that Europeans cannibalized their captives. Some Africans starved to death on the slave ships because they believed that the food being served to them were the remains of prior captives. So I want to pause here for a second. I absolutely believe myself that Africans really didn't know what became of the captives. I believe some Africans felt that, because again, slavery is nothing new, right? I do believe that Africans believed in a slavery, right, that reflected their own versions of slavery, which was, you know, you might be in servitude for X amount of years. In fact, you can read this kind of stuff in these people's Bible, right? You might be in servitude for 7 years or what have you, but you still could come out of that enslavement. You can still marry into your enslaver's family, etc., right? I don't believe Africans held chattel slavery, subhuman bondage like these Europeans do. But I will say, I think I would be remiss if I didn't say this, that if you didn't know what became of the captives, and I do understand that the captives tended to be prisoners of tribal war, but my God, if you didn't know what became of them, I would think I would kind of ease up off of that stuff. When folks are being taken out of your sight, you don't know what becomes of them. This is why we tend to protect our children so much. And keep this, when you lose sight of your children, people who you love, people, your loved ones, your people, you're supposed to keep sight of them. Anything can happen when you lose sight of your people. Type 1 in the chat if you guys can hear me. YouTube is giving me this no data thing again. I might really have to make the switch. Now it says excellent connection. But you know, that's my one issue. And I don't want to just gloss over that issue. That's a problem too, right? So let me continue. A common belief among Africans was that Europeans cannibalized their captives. So again, I don't care if you were a rival tribe, my mentality would have been, if you, whatever you're taking them and doing, you might come and want to do to me next. Especially considering Africans did have certain thoughts and sayings along the lines of, if your neighbor's house is burning, you check yours. If these Portuguese and whatnot are grabbing, with some of y'all's help, by the way, but if they're grabbing other Africans, you got to check stock and say, wait a minute. A time will come that they'll want to come and grab us too. Some Africans starved to death on the slave ship because they believed that the food being served to them were the remains of prior captives. And guess what? There's a likelihood that it was. In other instances, the fear of being devoured led to uprisings on the slave ships. This belief was so commonplace that Portuguese traders in the Gambia were informed by Africans that, quote, the Christians ate human flesh, and that all the slaves they bought, they carried away to eat. I'm sorry, I think I got the matron here with me. Hold on a sec. Matron, are you there? Oh, okay. Let me make sure you're coming through. Say something again for me. I can hear you, but this damn thing, this is probably why I gotta go over to StreamYard, because my desktop audio was working fine through. No. Hold on. I need to get it right. So give me one quick second. Okay. Say something again for me. Nah, they can't hear this thing. It's playing the goddamn fool. I'm so sick of this. So I might have to really make that move over. But you were saying, Matron, I'll relay what you were saying.
I was just saying that's the Eucharist, you know, the communion, the Holy Communion. This is my body and my blood. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what they were commenting on. So the chat should be able to hear you now because I saw the meters moving. Yeah, that's the Eucharist. And so the Africans were pointing that out to them that, y'all dudes actually, y'all dudes eat the body and drink the blood. And so they assume that, y'all doing that with the slaves too. Ola Uda Equano recorded the fear that he felt about the possibility of being eaten when he was captured. I read a paper about this brother. Matron, did you read something about him as well?
Yes,
right.
I did. Mm-hmm.
Right. So he says, when I looked around the ship too and saw a large furnace or copper boiling and a multitude of black people of every description chained together, every one of their countenances expressing dejection and sorrow, I no longer doubted of my fate. Quite overpowered with horror and anguish, I fell motionless on the deck and fainted. When I recovered a little, I found some black people about me, who I believe were some of those who brought me on board and had been receiving their pay. They talked to me in order to cheer me, but all in vain. I asked them if we were not to be eaten by those white men with horrible looks, red faces, and loose hair. They told me I was not. One of the crew brought me a small portion of spirituous liquor in a wine glass, but being afraid of him, I would not take it out of his hand. He probably thought it was blood. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I would have thought it was blood because I'd have figured they was lying to me.
Right. So this is the and by the way, thanks to the matron for hopping on here with me. If you're listening and you're on the Discord, you too can hop on the on-air voice channel, and you could voice your thoughts as we go along too, because the papers, this reading is going to get quite interesting in a second. All right, in the chat room, Ogun says the ethnic tribal nations who left Africa as POWs forged our united identity as Africans in the so-called New World. Yeah, but even that statement sounds kind of muted in that it was violent, and we should have had more concern for our people. But like we learned recently on the Learning Curve After Dark, with the revolutionary matron. Africans tend to not even think of themselves as African. We do that stuff, right? Africans tend to consider themselves their tribe or their group. And once you have that stuff going on, that will be the downfall of your whole situation, right? So a part of the problem that we really need to address is between the goofy tribalism, like, and I use goofy because I wanted to hurt some feelings. I wanted to hurt some feelings, right? Because it's silly. This is where the folks will come in and said, he's delusional. No, I'm not delusional. That tribalism stuff in the face of what we're dealing with, it's goofy. When we have a nation, a superpower in the continent, you could engage in some of that stuff, right? But we don't have no power backing right now, so we can't afford to be wasting time on tribal disputes. And the other next problem we have is a religious problem. A lot of those Negroes on the continent who participated in the Maafa, a lot of them want some, that's Allah's will be done. That's Christ's will be done. You packing them up on ships and all that, that's fine, that's Allah's will. We got to get off of that stuff, right? To continue, right? So that's I'm kind of butchering his name, Olada Equano. I think that's the pronunciation. Matron, how do you pronounce his name?
I just called him Equino.
Okay, Equino. That's what we'll do. We'll just call him Equino. All right. So to continue, this is not to say that Africans did not have full knowledge of the Middle Passage and the slave plantation. So let me go back up here for a second in the first part. All right. Am I tripping? The first paragraph. So, Dwayne Wong acknowledges few knew about the Middle Passage and slave plantations, right? So here he's saying, this is not to say that Africans did not have full knowledge. So now, which is it? Right? Did few know, or did Africans have full knowledge of the Middle Passage and the slave plantation? So that's a little, inconsistency in the writing there, right? An example of this is the fact that Antonio Manuel, an ambassador for the Congo Kingdom, stopped in Brazil on his way to Europe to rescue people who were wrongfully enslaved. And I think Magic Commander may have brought up Antonio Manuel the other night. He did, right?
Yeah, he brought him up. But, there's always that little bit of nuance because some people read it as wrongfully enslaved versus enslaved, and people want to get in a tither about that.
Right. So like, for example, you guys in the chat, or maybe the matron who's on here with me, she might remember there was a prince. I don't think it was Aquino. It was someone else, wasn't it? Wasn't there a prince?
It was someone else. Yeah, he spoke Arabic. He was a Muslim, and they couldn't understand him. Give me a minute and I can pull up his name, but he was a Muslim, and nobody in the Americas understood him. They shipped him off to England, and he was like reciting the Quran and his prayers and doing his rituals and things like that. And then they finally found someone that spoke his language, and they found out who he was. They were trying to utilize and leverage his presence in England to open up more trade into the continent, right? But like his people didn't want to go for it, and so they like kind of got pissed off and was like, get out of here.
Was he the one who was like the prince?
Yes.
Right. So I think, so when I read this and it says wrongfully enslaved, it sounds like my boy Antonio Manuel was going around picking up guys like this, like a prince or something, who was just snatched and should have never been snatched and on how you write stuff and how you describe a situation. To continue, this is also an example of an African noble rescuing some that had been enslaved in the Americas. Overall, however, most Africans really had no way of knowing what was happening or the scope of what was happening. The Congo Kingdom was overwhelmed by the onslaught and chaos caused by the slave trade, and it was eventually destroyed by the Portuguese. The Congo was losing so many of its citizens to the slave trade that Alfonso I complained that the slave trade was depopulating his kingdom. Some of Alfonso's own family members were captured and enslaved in Brazil. When Alfonso spoke out against the slave trade, he was nearly assassinated by Portuguese slave traders. This is an example of the type of chaotic situation which the slave trade created throughout Africa. You see, the thing is, once you let a ball start rolling, it's hard to stop the ball from rolling. Right? Ogun says the person is Abdul Rahman Ibrahim. Abdul Rahman Ibrahim. Right? Ogun is I'm trying not to confuse a couple of stories. Is that the brother who also, the brother I'm thinking about, I think was in America, had a family and everything. And when he got back to the continent, they sent him to like Sierra Leone or something. To a country in Africa neighboring his homeland. And he died, I think, of yellow fever before he was actually able to cross the border into his homeland. And he was a prince from a country neighboring Sierra Leone. Right? And there's a movie / documentary on Amazon Prime that you can watch. If I had time right now, I'd look it up. But that's the brother who I really had in mind. But again, even just talking about like these Africans who were wrongfully, quote unquote, wrongfully enslaved, a few different names can come up, right? Abdul Rahman Ibrahim, I think that's who maybe the matron was talking about, right? Yes, Liberia, right? He was from Sierra Leone and they dropped him in Liberia or something like that. And before he could cross the border, he died from yellow fever. You know, and there's so much of these stories that sometimes it's hard to keep track of it. So I apologize for not having all the details right now. To continue. Where was I? The kingdoms which managed to survive had to become very militarized. Pre-colonial African history. It was very rare to find kingdoms which maintained standing armies. Most of those heavily militarized kingdoms came into existence in West Africa during the slave trade. In my book, this is Dwayne Wong now, in my book, Muhammad Ali, The Confederate Flag and Other Essays, I gave the specific example of Dahomey, which was so militarized that it became known as the Black Spotter. Dahomey's development was in direct response to the slave trade. By the way, Dahomey had a group of women who were exceptional combatants. In fact, it's believed that the story of Wonder Woman, a lot of people think it's some Greek story, but that story of Wonder Woman, a lot of people believe that's a stolen concept from the Dahomey women, right? Dahomey's development was in direct response to the slave trade. Contrary to what some might believe, the slave trade was not hugely beneficial for the African states that were involved. Dahomey was one of the most notorious slave trading states in West Africa, but conducting slave raids to acquire captives was a very costly exercise. Dahomey used some of the war captives acquired in these raids to replenish its ranks by replacing the men that Dahomey lost in combat. During the period of the slave trade, Dahomey's population stagnated. The kingdom also suffered from famine. So here's where this article gets a little bit interesting. He says, O'Shea, one of the supporters of the ADOS movement, did a video in which he suggested that Ghana owes Black Americans reparations for the role that certain people in Ghana played in the slave trade. Before I continue reading that paragraph, let's listen to this. I guess this is O'Shea. Let's listen to O'Shea. Let's listen to what O'Shea has to say, right? And then I want you guys to drop your comments in the chat room as this video is played, and let's have a conversation about this video once you've finished viewing it.
On Black YouTube, we've been having a discussion about that hashtag. I believe was created by Yvette Cornell and Tone Talks, and I believe this hashtag is created to serve two main purposes. One is to give the African Americans a unique identity away from other groups, the Nigerian Americans, Ghanaian Americans, and the like. Okay, we're only focusing on the blacks here that came from descendants of slavery to the United States, excluding Haitians, Jamaicans, other African groups or other Caribbean groups. But then there's this reparations piece, that America owes these people reparations for slavery. They owe these people, our group, ADOS, these unique people who are us, we are owed reparations. That I agree. Whether we will get it, I'm not sure. We may not be here to live to see it. But I want to add something to that if I can. Sister Yvette Cornell, Brother Tone Talks, that's not just them.
Okay, seems like there's a strange issue here. Hold on a second for me. Why is it buffering? Y'all bear with me 1 second here. I hate when stuff doesn't work fluidly. In the meantime, are you guys familiar with this guy?
Yeah, I'm familiar with him a little bit. I don't know a lot of his content, but I know some of his content. But he's not like a he's more of a commentator on celebrity life. That's what I see of him, and he talks about different pro-black male.
That America.
He talks about different pro-black males, you say?
Pro-black male perspectives, like, you know, as far as, you know, relationship dynamics, toxic women, and things like that.
Oh, okay. Let's try this again.
America owes these people reparations for slavery. They owe these people, our group, ADOS, these unique people who are us, we are owed reparations. That I agree. Whether we will get it, I'm not sure. We may not be here to live to see it. But I want to add something to that if I can. Sister Yvette Cornell, Brother Tone Talks, that's not just them. Because the white folks had some help in shipping our black ass over here. They just didn't do it by themselves. They also had help. Our own folks, the native people of West Africa. Now, I know there are so many people who are guilty of this, from the Senegalese, the Gambian coastline, some parts of now Nigeria. But our I'm really going to focus on one group. I got to focus on one group that I got to say, if I say who owes us the most money, I got to call out one group in particular. Ghana. That's who I want my reparations from. If the white man gonna give it to me, Ghana, I want mine from you. I'm gonna tell you why I want mine from just Ghana. I don't really care about the other people. Ghana, I want it from you. I'm gonna tell you why. Dr. Samir has always been wondering, why don't I ever go to West Africa? He's always in West Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, all those places, Togo, Benin. I refuse to go for the most part. Whenever you see me, I'm always in East Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, might go down to South Africa, but you'll never really catch me in the West. I might go to Liberia, shout out to my girl Water Europe, my play cousin. I might go out there and see her. But I stay away from West Africa for certain reasons. You want to know why? I will tell you. Ghana has this whole, I think that it's fake as hell, repatriate home, you African Americans kind of feel. Spend your money to come to Ghana and help us rebuild. Now, there's some YouTubers there that I have a lot of respect for. Shout out to the Native Born channel. They have an excellent channel. I look at Natural Ghana Girl. I look at The Only Way is Ghana. I see all these people doing stuff in Ghana. That's just tremendous. And I love those channels. So shout those people out. I'll leave their links in the first comment. But one thing that I don't like about Ghana, even though I've never been, is Cape Coast. And Cape Coast Ghana rubs me the wrong way. And any African American or ADOL Negro that goes down there, they also rub me the wrong way because Cape Coast Ghana was where the slave dungeons were. That's where they took some of the African Americans that showed up to America. They stayed in these dungeons and they suffered like animals until they were shipped away. Such an experience to me, if I am a person, and I'm getting upset, I'm getting tight thinking about it, that's something I don't want to relive. Even though it had nothing to do with me. But if that's something and I'm the leader of a place like that, I'm bombing that shit. I'm blowing it up because it is negative. I'm not going to celebrate a place where Africans were sent back. And you Negroes, you go down there and you pay for that shit. And some of you act so emotional, you cry and you weep all night long. You do stupid little dances and all type of other crazy retarded things, and to me that's a goddamn disrespect, because who in their right mind wants to see that? And then who was dumb enough to pay for it? And I'm skeptical of anybody, white. What are you doing down there? Look at the damn Cape Coast slave thing. Why are you there? And in fact, why do they let them there? That's my next point. They will charge you as a descendant of slave to see where they took your ancestors from. So not only did they sell you, they set up a damn tourism place and invite you to come back, and they will charge you to see where they had your ancestors in them damn slave dungeons, and where they shipped them out, where they cried their last cry on the continent of Africa, didn't want to go and go into a place where they would be abused for years to come, and their kids and their kids and their kids, and you pay for it, and they charge. So not only did you profit when you sold us away, we come back and you charge us for the shit that was our agony. And for that reason alone, any country that operates a slave dungeon tourism thing, that country I cannot fuck with. I'm sorry, that's why I never went. I'm not helping rebuild no goddamn country or do anything in a damn country that has an exhibition where our ADOS people, what song is that? And then you gonna tour people around that shit? And this is the kind of reason why you don't get no respect now. You go out there and you tell other brothers to come to Ghana and all type of other stuff. Some of you out there getting your shit broken into. Ain't never been a person that I know that's been a YouTuber that's been from Ghana and ain't been in a house working into 3 or 4 goddamn times. Had all their shit taken. Well, why? How can they respect you? You will pay to see a tour of your people getting sent back. Or should I say, do you understand? I mean, how can you respect a group like that? And not only that, let's look at the Chinese though. Because shout out to Dr. Samir. He said this. The Chinese are doing some illegal extractions of resources there. Who do the Ghanaians allow to police the situation? The Chinese. So the Chinese are stealing stuff from the country that makes money, are not prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and then you allow the Chinese to police other Chinese in your country, knowing goddamn well if Ghanaians were still in China, they would never allow the Ghanaian police to police the Chinese. They put your ass in jail. And if not, that's the worst. But see, not only that, you will do everything for the Chinese group who is stealing from you. African Americans have always tried to do nice things for West Africa. But when it comes to getting the citizenship, like Don's been talking about, you're not getting no citizenship. You know you have all the rights that a Chinese person or a white person or anybody else person has. You have a tourist right to God. They don't treat you like they supposed to treat you. I'm telling you this. They have already admitted we made a mistake when we sold you. We take responsibility for putting you in that situation. This is not my words. Ghanaian chiefs have said that. They have owned up to their irresponsibility in the slave trade. But when it comes to you, you're not getting no passport there. You're not getting no citizenship there. Not unless you stay there for, a certain amount of years. You don't have the laws to buy land like the people in Ghana. No, you don't. And see, for that reason, Ghana gotta kick back. You owe us just as much as the white men do. Oh, yes, you do. I gotta put them on the chopping block. Not only should you want it from the white men, we want it from y'all. I don't care about it bankrupt to you. Because you damn sure don't care about us when we come over there. However much you charge for a tour at Cape Coast, come over here, Negro. Come over here and see how your people got deported. That'll be $10, $30, whatever it costs. That's why I'm charging you that. So we got to put that on the boards too. We want it from them. Because you can't just be wanting it from the white man. Because the white man had help in you getting there. He didn't just get into the interior Africa by himself. They took him there. And they helped build them goddamn things and sent you away. They the ones that caught you and put your people there. So goddamn it, if the white man gotta pay, they gotta pay. And they are still the ones operating the tourism Cape Coast damn dungeon right goddamn now, making money off your dysfunction. Making money off the fact that you got sent away. And it's a joke. It's a slap in the face. And no other group would ever allow that. So damn it, if the white man owe us, Ghana owe us too. And you heard it first. I don't even want no citizenship. Give me the money. You can't give me the money? Give me some cattle. I'll take whatever I can get. Give me something. Give me some dashikis. I need it in my life. I need it all. Give it to me. Give me something. A T-Mobile card, I gotta have something. I'm putting it on the table. If the USA gotta pay, I want double checks. I don't care what it costs. Give it out. Or if you're gonna operate that Cape Coast thing, how about this? Give me the Cape Coast. I turn that into a barbecue pit or something like that. You know, I get a thing right. And that's what needs to happen. So go ahead and check out Dynasty Samir's videos on this. So he's been talking some real good stuff. Shout out to all the people. It might be controversial, but that's why you watch my goddamn channel, because I say shit that don't nobody else say, and you can't stop watching me. So I don't want to hear you crying all into the comments and I don't want to hear it. I don't care about you. I don't care about you crying. Do this look like a face that care about you crying? Negro, please get your ass out of my goddamn video. And now I'm out. And as you know, the buffoonery remains at an all-time high. Peace.
Okay. How do you guys feel about that video? Oh, there's been a chat going on. Ogun addressing the question I had earlier about the brother who was a prince in Africa, enslaved, sent to America, had a family, was well respected. He was a smart guy, and finally had a chance to go back home. They took him to a neighboring country, and he died trying to cross the border. He said Abdul was Fouta, Jalon, Middle Guinea, in West Africa. Okay. Joni Rosenthal, Joni R, is here. She is familiar with the guy who was talking. She says, yes, he's a clown. Okay. The learning curve with Revolutionary Matron types something, but it starts with number 2. So number 2, the Africans that were left are dead. They were bred out of existence. 3, he is ignoring the fact that the company set up their trading post there like a seaport today. She goes on to say, I feel him on... Shit, I just moved. Hold on a second. She goes on to say, I feel him on bombing the trade post, LOL. Joni says, bonsoir. Ogun says, Ghana means warrior king, for the Ouagadougou was West Africa Empire based in modern-day southeast of Mauritania and western Mali that existed from 300 to 1100. I guess that's the centuries, 300 to 1100. KW Don 7 is in the room. Y'all say what's up to KW Don 7. Always a regular in any show that I do on the Bitter Medicine podcast. Always there. Shout out KW Don 7. He says O'Shea Duke Jackson, though he claims to be a Pan-Africanist, he is a very controversial figure. He is prominent within the black manosphere that fuels the gender war. Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay. I get now I get a little bit more information on who this dude is. Okay. The matron says we need a late night for diaspora pain, cause man, it's so real. Joni R says to KW Don 7, yes, he's playing both sides. Revolutionary Matron agrees KW Don 7. Ogun says African germology spewing by symptoms of the virus. The learning curve says I was born vaxxed. Okay. What I will say, the only thing I agree with him on is get rid of those goddamn dungeons. Don't turn my ancestral pain. Because think about this now. This is how wild this is, right? that little Amina Castle bullshit, where those dungeons are. Do you realize, right? My family come from the enslaved, right? In the Caribbean, right? In the Americas, I should say, right? And do you realize that you, me, all of us who are here who descended from the Ma'afa, do you realize that we had an ancestor or two that walk through those gates? They call it the gate of, it's the gate of no return, I think they call it. Do you guys realize, like, they walk through that shit? And here we are today sitting down using technology, which I'm sure those Kenyans, according to that one Kenyan who's on the... And so the idea that you're going to make that a tourist thing, I'm not cool with that. I'm not cool with that because there's a couple of problems with it. One of the problems is, number one, like this dude pointed out, we got to go back there and take it in as a tourist, which is kind of disrespectful. We got to pay our money to go walk through the shit. And then number two, what are the Africans there thinking to themselves about us out here when they look at that bullshit monument of our suffering, of our enslavement? When they go out and apply for jobs there, to be the tour guides and all that kind of stuff, how do you think they feel about us when you have that bullshit? So one thing I agree with is get rid of that nonsense. Did they save the furnaces for when the Jews were put in them? Did they save any of those furnaces? Does anyone know? As far as I know, they put a plaque somewhere with a wrong estimate of how many Jews died, which they later changed, but no one talks about it. Right? They put a plaque somewhere. Right? Did they save furnaces? I don't think so. You know, so that's the one thing I would agree with him. Everything else, he's on some nonsense. Because this man is saying that if white folks gotta pay, make sure them damn Africans have to pay too. And I don't like how that sounds. Matron, were you about to say something?
I was just going to agree with you. Like, we left there Africans. They didn't bring any blacks, Negroes, ADOS, Bahamians. They didn't bring none of them people on that boat. They brought African prisoners of war and the ones that they stole on that boat. So they just brought over Africans. And you think that your brother's debt to you is the same or greater than the enslaver that lied to us both, than the colonizer that wanted to do both of us harm, shows that there's fundamentally something wrong with the education we putting out here.
Absolutely. That desire to play tough. And also, if you think about it, there's a weird little link he's creating here. He's saying that if you're asking for white folks to pay, you got to make those Africans pay first. And Dwayne Wong is going to say something here in a second in this article that's a interesting point. Joni R said, yes, it's a museum. So they saved the furnaces that they were putting the Uish in. They have them in a museum. And not that it matters. My point is that we don't really need that bullshit. We don't need people, especially white folks, go in there and pretending to be sad about the conditions of this dungeon where the rooftops were like 5 foot high and the corridors are about 1.5 to 2 feet wide. We don't need that shit either. So that's the one thing I would agree with him. Peace, sir, Zuliism. I saw Zuliism earlier today. by the way. Right? He says, peace to all the warriors. Peace to you too, bro. Right? So that could be, you know, they could blow that up. They could burn that down. But the notion that if you're going to hold white folks accountable, you must hold the African accountable. And I think the matron has put it succinctly a second ago. Right? That's some whole shit too. Right? Let me continue. Erzuliism says porn slave trauma. Yeah, and I don't like the optics of it, and I don't like what it's saying to both sides now too. I don't like the fact that there's Ghanaians who apply for jobs and go make their livelihoods off of that shit either. And they watch us come through crying, looking at these conditions. Doesn't sit well with me. I never has. You know, never has sat well with me. But let's continue with the article. So O'Shea, one of the supporters of the ADOS movement, did a video in which he suggests that Ghana owes Black Americans reparations for the role that certain people in Ghana played in the slave trade. I just played the video just now. Considering that African slave traders were often paid in firearms, liquor, and cheap trinkets, I am not sure how much reparations Black Americans can truly expect to receive from Ghana. And that's an interesting point, but I think the next point is a powerful point. He said African kingdoms that were involved in the slave trade did not build industries from their role in the slave trade. We got to remember, it's the slave trade that really funded this white boy's economic system. This white boy's economic system is funded off of the free labor they got and the cottage industries they were able to create. And by the way, we spoke about the Uish. The Uish made a grip off of slavery. They could threaten me with the ADL and all that shit all they want. Facts is facts. Facts is facts. They made a grip off of the boat making industry, the banking industry. They made a grip, and that's the, you know, those are the people. These people's Bible talks about as the money lenders and all that kind of stuff. They made a grip, right? Joni R says Nigeria just set up a museum for the same thing. Yeah, that could stop. Sightlock is here. I saw Sightlock earlier in the Matron's earlier show. Sightlock is here. Welcome to the Bit of Medicine podcast chat room. He or she says O'Shea changes wherever the wind blows. Here's the thing. If you want a telltale sign of a grifter, see how much their opinions and their outlook change. And it's so sad that our people don't recognize this. When you look at Yvette Carnell, you look at Tone Talks, who I used to really like Tone Talks one time ago, right? Because I like how he used to break down legalese and stuff like that, but he's just a disappointment. Yvette, I wasn't so much surprised by her because she's a coward. She proved herself to be a coward. By the way, if you're here right now, hit the like button. We have more viewers than likes. That's not cool. It only takes you about a second to hit the like button, right? Hit the like button, please. As I was saying, and so, you know, I'm not familiar with O'Shea, but if his views change like the wind blows, then that's just a grifter as well. Keep your eyes on these grifters. Like I said before, don't fall back. Don't let grifters grift and you chill while it happens. You know why? Because like we saw the other day, I see KW Dawn 7 typed 1. Why is KW-7 type in 1? I'm not sure. Right? But like I say all the time, when ADOS and FBA and all that stuff was starting, I pointed it out. Folks said, "Ah, don't worry about it." Now every day on social media, there's an argument about Pan-Africanism. There's an argument about who sold us, why didn't they come to rescue us, and all this type of stuff. Right? Every day there's more and more division between groups of different Africans. Right? And it's because we didn't put the grifter in check. Now some will say, well, we don't have large enough platforms. No, if enough of us didn't support it, or if enough of us countered it when it first started, again, once that ball starts rolling, it's hard to stop it. You know, it's hard to stop it. Joni R says, I kind of disagree with you, because before the Caucasian slave trade, there was the Arab slave trade. That says something about Africans themselves. Well, what does it say about Africans? Does it say something sinister about Africans, Joni R? By the way, I still don't know what it is you disagree with me with. Does it say something sinister about Africans? Does it say something inherently weak about Africans? What is it that the Arab slave trade and the Ma'afa, or the Middle Passage European slave trade, what does that say about Africans themselves? Who, by the way, we are descended from, right? Zuliism earlier said, the sellers will never understand the pain of the soul. That's, whew. KW-7's typed the number 1. I still don't know what that number 1 was for, right? I'll come back and check out what Joni has to say to that, right? But I want to talk about something here too. You know, there's a saying that you'll hear us say today, nowadays, all the time, that folks are led by their stomachs, right? When you listen to what Dwayne Wong says, he says, considering that African slave traders were often paid in firearms, okay, I could get the fire, liquor, and cheap trinkets, that really don't look good. And like I told you guys, I was reading a paper. I thought about reading it here on the show before, and then I decided not to. Which is, you know, this white boy has this saying that the guns that they sold to Africans were shabby guns, right? The firearms were shabby. The technology that created those guns was past its prime already, and that the Africans ate that shit up. And he made the point to say that you couldn't pull that on the Indians. They made the point to say that it was similar tactics, but with the Indians, like you couldn't come to them with some shabby ass gun. In other words, the guns that these guys were getting, right? The guns that these guys were getting couldn't even be used by them to protect themselves ultimately. And that's a damn shame. That's a shame. That doesn't look good. That really doesn't feel good. Right? Joni R says that they sold their people into slavery. I still don't know what you mean. The Africans didn't sell their people into slavery? Or that the Africans did sell their people into slavery? Zuliism says, but so how do we deal with Africans who sold us and never apologized and don't acknowledge it? Well, that's not really true. They acknowledge it. They've apologized as well. What I would want them to do, and it's proper. See, so here's the problem, and I think this article is going to touch on it too. The problem is that the Africans themselves were left in a shambles. It's not like they built up institutions and were able to build up their own economies and all that stuff. After their enslavement, they were colonized as well. As this paper has spoken of already, a lot of their kingdoms, because they were losing people, a lot of their kingdoms were done because of the transatlantic slave trade. They had no power. They went into a stage of survival mode, which if you read the book by the Guyanese brother, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, etc., you get an idea, that's Walter Rodney, you get an idea of what really happened with these Africans. The brain drain occurred. And as the matron pointed out on her show recently, in recent days, she pointed out how these Europeans were grabbing people, our ancestors who were capable and innovative. They wasn't just grabbing wildly all the time. As a matter of fact, if you even read about what was going on here in the States, here in the New World, in the Americas, when they were selling our ancestors and stuff like that, they would actually go there and measure their muscles and describe them as a strong buck and all that stuff. Like they didn't grab any little weakling per se, Matron.
I was just gonna say, I just looked at Joni's comment, and what I'm putting together is that she doesn't think that it was an African culture of selling people into slavery, but there actually was, because so you got to look at two different social society structures and kind of sort of make an equivalency. If you were the slave of an African king, it was like being a footman in the house of a duke. American slavery is peculiar because of its brutality. Sorry if the phone cut out. American slavery is peculiar because of its brutality and their desire to keep us close to them. Slavery was another level of participation in the overall society in both Roman and African cultures. And Africans would oftentimes, like some of the first slaves that came to the New World were given as gifts from members of the king's court in African cultures to the Europeans because they were trying to establish relationships with them. So that's a part of it. But when Islam came into Africa, like just thousands of years, like we're spanning a lot of time here, but when Islam became a part of the consciousness and in African society, they wanted those resources, and they converted those Africans, and they got access to the resources, and they taught them about enslavement and stratified societies, but they put a twist on it, and their twist on it was that slavery is for life, and people are born a slave, and you can sell these people because these people are not your people. And religion has been the vehicle to continue to stratify societies based on race, ethnicity, and all those other things, and closeness to whiteness. So that's why it becomes a situation where it's everyone against the African, because the African represents a level of resource, power, and strength that no other people have. That's why they try to keep confusing us.
Well said. Thank you. Well said. In the chat, Erzuliism says, but so how do we deal with Africans who sold us and never apologized? I addressed that. The matron said there is a solution, no reprieve and no quarter. KW7 says, I have heard that Dutch were involved in cannibalizing Africans. I never wanted to investigate it because I fear what I would find out. Johnny R said that there's an African culture of selling people into slavery. No, the African culture. So the matron just addressed that, but the reality and the thing I don't want people to lose sight of is that there's a system of slavery all over the world since the beginning. Once a man realized that he was stronger than another man, there was slavery. And so there was almost a caste system, I guess you could call it, all over the globe where there were slaves. The issue was that the slavery that happened in the U.S., in the transatlantic deal, was a slavery where the human was no longer treated like a human. Right? And so that's the difference. The subhuman bondage, chattel slavery. Right? Like I said early on, there was a time where in Africa you might be, you know what's the equivalent of it? They had it here in the States. They still have it to a certain extent. It was big in the UK, in Britain at one time. It's like debtors, what do they call it again? Debtors prison. Right? You owe a debt to someone and you got to go serve some time to do it. Right? And so we had that in the continent. And like the matron said, in fact, we mentioned Alfonso the First, who lost so many people that he himself was almost assassinated for speaking out to the Portuguese against all these people being taken. But a guy like him actually gave some quote-unquote slaves as a gift to try to establish trade and all kind of stuff. It was just something that was done. And by the way, before you look down your noses at these Africans, not talking to anyone here in particular, but your Bible, your Old Testament is full of people being enslaved in this manner. Who's your boy? Is it Jacob? Who was enslaved for 7 years to try and marry this man's daughter. And after 7 years, this man gave him the ugly daughter.
She had a lazy eye, and she was the oldest, and yes, and then he had to
work 7 more years
to get the one he wanted.
Right? And that's in y'all's Bible. That's the shit that y'all, worship and all that stuff. Right? So that just shows you that it was something that was going on. Right? But this subhuman stuff, we had never really seen that before. And unfortunately, it happened to us. Sightlock says African chose Islam because it was a better choice than Christianity. I almost have to laugh at that because I have to laugh at that.
Oh, dude.
Go ahead, Matron.
Okay. Nope, I just got, it's an Abrahamic religion.
Right.
They have a similar origin story.
Yeah.
It's like saying that there is a difference between me and my cousins, right? But when we look back to who we really are, right, we're all the same people.
All the same. And in fact, I'll put it like this, Matron. If your big cousin whooped my ass and the little cousin whooped me, it's the same ass whooping from your cousins in there.
Right.
I don't look at none of them favorably now. I got my ass whooped by both of them. Right? Sightlock says, can I call in? So, Sightlock, this is why I have that poll up there about the StreamYard. You would have to join the Discord. Right? You'd have to join the Discord. The link is at the top of the description, which would mean you have to download the app, etc., etc. Join the Discord, and I can get you on. I don't have the StreamYard capabilities that the matron has. That's something I'm considering I might have to switch over to soon. Right? In fact, I probably will, because when I was on the matron show, my mic and everything sounded much better than it usually sounds using this software that I use now. Right? Ogun said laughing my ass off. Dorico Cooper's here saying greetings, peace family. And Ozuliism, I guess, is saying to Ogun warrior. Cool. Okay, so let's continue with the reading. But that's the backdrop of this whole transatlantic slavery deal. Africans were dealing in this thing like everyone else was, right? But they had no idea what these savages, these European savages, were going to do. And by the way, the Arab slavery thing, if I'm not mistaken, that was largely on the east side of Africa, right?
It was my understanding they couldn't really make significant inroads into the western part of Africa,
right,
because of all the ideological differences.
Right. So our ancestors in the West probably had no idea just how savage these fools could be, right? And so they were these willing participants in something they didn't understand. Can I kill them for it? Only a little bit, right? And again, a lot of these people who were enslaved were from other tribes, aside from their tribe, and tribal beef and all that kind of stuff was going on. And so they were giving away people that weren't their people per se. But I still have a little bit of problem in that you should have cared about the people and given them, to put them on ships and send them somewhere with no idea what's happening. I still feel something should have bothered you about that. Something in you should have bothered you about that. But Sightlock, if you join the Discord, you can get on. If not, you can just post your comments in the chat and I'll read them live on air. All right, to continue with the reading of the paper. In Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, that John Henry Clark wrote, the kind of slavery that the European was about to introduce into West Africa had no relationship to the African system of indentured servitude. So that's the proper title to use. That it was an indentured servitude that you found in Africa. Again, that's the same thing that Jacob found himself in. I see we got Erzuliism on the Discord. Right? Erzuliism, if you want to say something, let me know. Right? But to continue. Erzuliism, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to say something. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah.
No, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but I do feel a way that what's the last thing you just said. At the end of the day, those are human beings.
Yes.
That's why.
Yes.
Those are human beings.
Yes.
And yes, you may have conquered them. You may have conquered them during battle. Yes. But these people, you didn't even know where they came from.
Right.
People that look totally different from you.
Right.
Straight hair. How could you just give them away and thinking, what evidence did you get? You're a king. You're a queen. You're a leader. Did you research to find out where they're going to take these people? And this is the same thing. What the last thing you also just said when we had the conversation on the matron podcast, when the young man said, we don't really think of it as African. It's tribal.
Yeah, it's tribal.
So they've been doing this since forever, and then this is how this end up happening. You sell your I don't know what's gonna happen, but let me send them across the board. So I understand why a lot of us are saying is like, yes, it was indentured slavery or whatever. That's what you thought, but the what happened was not what you thought.
Right. And the problem with that gunner is like I said earlier, if you let that ball start to roll and gain momentum, you're gonna have hell to stop it, and that's what happened to the Africans. Go ahead.
And what happened is what they thought. This is the thing: you give your brother, or your so-called enemy away, but they came back for you. Look at the continent now. Yeah, you gave us away or whatever, but they came back for you. So and like you said, for guns that was not even working, for mirror, for what? It really pains me when you think about it. It's like they were human beings, and if you think these people are supposed to be spiritual, how in your spirituality? This is another thing we must address. So your spirituality didn't tell you this is not the thing to do? Your prophet didn't tell you this was going to come back to you? And I read somewhere, I forget, because I'm writing this fiction book. They say, listen to this. When they sold you, before you went on the boat, they made you turn 7, I think it's called the gate of no return. They made you turn 7 times so you could forget that they sold you out. I read this somewhere, I don't know where it was. I was doing some research for fiction, for something I'm writing, and they said when they sold you out of that castle or out of the coast, there's something called the gate of no return. They made you turn around, circle it 7 times so you could forget that they sold you out. So if they did that, they knew something was wrong that they were doing. I don't know if no one ever came into that piece of writing. When I'm trying to find it again, but they said that they made you walk 7 times around a gate so you could forget that they sold you out. I don't know if it's African who wrote that or if it's, who wrote it to create confusion, but that's what I read one time. So that's all I have to take. Go ahead, man. Continue.
No, I mean, you made excellent points just now. I see this brother or sister, I think it was a brother, joined the Discord just now. Now, what's the brother's name again? Sightlock, what's your handle on the Discord? Because I think 2 people just joined the Discord. What's your handle on the Discord? And like the matron just said, if you scroll down on the left hand side, you will see, you will see a section that says on air. And in there you should see my name, Koku. You should see Revolutionary Matron. You should see Aiti Toma inside there. That's where you want to go. If you click in there, you should be fine. Let me just make sure whoever just joined, I gave the roles to as podcast fans. So you should be able to find us down there and just jump in to that room. When you're in that room, I should see you, or the matron or someone will see you and they'll let me know that you're here. In the meantime, there were some other comments. So it's okay, yeah. So I gave you a role as a podcast fan. You should be able to scroll down on the left hand side. You go down far enough, you'll see something that's called On Air, the voice channel, and you could just hop in there. Yeah, Joni Gunner is from your country as well. Joni R says I'm on Discord. Are you on the voice channel as well? Right, you guys gotta go down to where you see the category live show, and under live show you'll see on air. It should be glowing, because it should be kind of glowing white, because I'm in there, Gunner is in there, I'm sorry, Erzuliism is in there, and Revolutionary Matron is in there as well. All right, but what Erzuliism just said is spot on perfection. Something spiritually should have spoken to our African ancestors who played a part. I would be pissed to know that I was being walked through the gate of no return and some MFO was drunk fiddling with an old gun as his prize for selling me out. I see Sean Jill is here. Sean Jill, can you speak? You'll have to unmute your phone or whatever you're on to speak. Let me see something. Right, you'll have to unmute that yourself. All right. In the meantime, I see Ogun is here. Peace, Ogun.
Peace.
How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are y'all doing tonight?
Good, good. How are you feeling about this reading so far?
Oh man, I'm excited. I'm over here just right, so I joined in.
Yeah.
It's a great. It's needed.
What do you feel about what Gunner Azuliism just said?
Oh, I'm in agreement with Azuliism. I mean, I'm in agreement with Azuliism in relationship to, our people should have never sold us into anything. Not only we're human beings, we're of the same family.
Yes.
So, and I have, and we're in the same, a lot of times in the same religious group. So why would you sell us to any group, be it the Arab or be it to the European, for any reason? We're one people. So you just said, hey, Azulism, Koku, and the rest, everyone that's on the show, I'm just gonna ship y'all on over there. I don't care, and that's just not cool.
With a bottle of rum and a BB gun in your hand, ain't that some bullshit?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you didn't get.
Go ahead, Ogu.
And you didn't get any. Advanced technology out of the process, and you wonder why there's such an adversarial relationship between those over there and us over here. You didn't care. I mean, it was for trinkets, for nothing. I'm done.
And then the thing is, this is one of the things that shocked me. They made the slave walk around the gate of Nuri just so they could forget that they sold them.
Yeah, so it's like they did a ritual.
Yes, I'm gonna find that and send it to y'all. And y'all, that means that you knew. But at the end of the day, in order to get this back, we gotta forgive them. At the end of the day, that pain has to go. We have to fix that relationship. No matter how hard it is for us to take, we gotta be like, yo, because no matter how much I hate my brother, yo, how I'm gonna send him to the other side to get murdered? That makes no sense. But we on this side have to find a way to fix this relationship that's been broken for centuries and centuries and centuries.
Matron?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you. Give me 1 second, Shanjo, and welcome to KWAZ Radio's Bitter Medicine. I'm just acting like talking. But the thing that I wanted to say was that, Roman law is based on property rights, right? And so when we that's not an African principle in that way. Like, we don't value objects in that way. And so that's why I fight so hard against the money consciousness aspect of this, because a hyper money consciousness or an obsession with the object has been our downfall.
Yeah, Sean Joe.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, man. It's finally nice to be able to speak to you all.
Nice.
I said a couple of points I want to touch on, heading back to my comments when I said earlier about the Africans, how they chose Islam over Christianity. And the reason why I stated that, going back from history, is that if you study enough history, you will know that people tell you that Africans were institutional in the creation of Christianity, going all the way back. And when you knew what happened during the Romans and the creation of Christianity, the Africans decided that they want to choose Islam because it's the closest thing to what they used to do. And to fall under the Christianity realm would be them falling under, you want to say, the Romans' rulership. So they chose Islam. As a matter of fact, without the Africans, there would be no such thing as Islam, because they're also institutional in making Islam what it is. Another point also is that, touching back, I wanted to make an address when you guys talking about the slavery when it comes to even going back to the Bible time and talking about how it was. And you were correct. Slavery in African culture is nothing what it is today, to the chattel slavery that we experience. Because as you all know, in African culture, prisoner of war could have eventually rose up to being what? The chief's wife, chief's son, chief everything, right? Correct me if I'm wrong with that one.
Yes.
All right, so we understand it wasn't the case, and the same thing that went into, you want to say, the Bible as well, to the Tanakh, as people call the Old Testament. And when you refer to that about Isaac getting a wife, it was African culture, because, I mean, back then, no person would give away their first daughter I'm giving away the second daughter without giving the first daughter. It's kind of a rite of passage. And I wouldn't do that myself either, knowing that my first daughter didn't get married and my second daughter is taken away. So yes, that was kind of a tradition that was done. And it wasn't in a sense of him working for, well, he was working for the rights to have the daughter, but it was a thing that was done in African culture. It wasn't the type of slavery that was done. And even in the book, when you read it, talk about slavery, it is nothing like what we experience today. Nothing close to it, not at all. It was more the sense of someone being a butler, because when you read it, it told you that people, the very slaves themselves had rights. When you compare that to the traditions from Egypt and all the lands that are around, there was a whole different ballgame when it comes to what we consider slavery.
I thank you for that input. My one question about that would be, why didn't the Africans just hold on to their spirituality as opposed to joining these Abrahamic religions, which we know today, we know for sure these are religions of the colonizer to continue and perpetuate colonialism?
I would disagree that it is the religion of the colonizer. I highly disagree with that. I would say Christianity is, even though it was created by Africans, because if you go back in history and you look at all the stuff, even the very book, the Bible itself, that was taught, there was no Christ in the book. None of that stuff was ever given in the book. The tradition that we Africans followed in the book was a strict tradition that has nothing to do with Caucasian. Because when you read the book, it told you themselves that the people in the book were black. And I know I sound like some of those wacky people that you would meet in New York City. I run into a couple of them myself, that be cursing black women out and, carrying swords in their hips. A bunch of foolish people over there. I'm not coming from where they're coming from, because there's a bunch of idiots over there, and I don't like to use that word. But when you technically read the book, that entirety of the Old Testament, not the New Testament, is strictly African history when you read the entirety of the book. And the people in that book, and if you compare it today with the laws and everything we have today, no respect, so there's none like it, even when it comes to African traditions. So I highly disagree it's a European or the slave master religion, because if we go by that, it has nothing to do with European at all. As a matter of fact, the book told you that the very same people that was oppressed, destroyed, captured away, it told you those are the beloved of the one and only living God in the book, if you read it correctly.
Well, I'm gonna state that.
Can I say something?
Okay.
Ogun, you going? Go ahead, Ogun. Go ahead, bro.
These so-called nomadic religions, Abrahamic faiths, I don't care how we want to view them, look at them, they've been used to enslave the mind, body, and soul of our people. What got us free in the Republic, the Empire of Haiti, was our religion and our beliefs and our gods. And that's what's going to get us free today. All that other stuff, I've heard it, and I've heard it over the years. I'm not trying to go through all of that. This is the reason why we're having this show and we're in the condition that we're in today. Our warriors got up and they got us free. All that other stuff, I'm muting it out. If that's the direction people want to go, that's fine. I have a saying, all kin folks ain't skin folks. And I know where my liberation came from. It came through the blood, sweat, tears, but they went out and they put in the works. That's it.
Gunna?
I'm gonna say something. The young man said Islam is the Ishmael side of, it's the Abrahamic religion. It's the same. It's a cousin. It's two brothers. It's the same religion. The funny thing, the Bible does not recognize Islam, but Islam recognizes the Bible. So the Bible was there before Islam. And if we're gonna, people today, the Black Americans, Black people today all over the world, they don't even go by the Old Testament. If you tell me let's go, because the Old Testament tells you, yo, you kill my brother, I'm gonna kill your brother. Most people now, the Christians, they don't operate on that. If they go by the New Testament, oh, there's a new covenant, there's BS. Those Abrahamic religions never set us free. Nowhere. The only person I said that did it, that they say according to what we learned, is Nat Turner that used the Old Testament. But you're not using the Old Testament to free yourself. Everything, even Islam. Oh, we all brothers. Brothers, what?
I think
what has Islam done for us?
I think it was Ogun who made the point that he, like Nat Turner, and I read this as well, that Nat Turner was using like Igbo principles or something in his liberation. Was that you, Ogun?
Well, you were fading out, Koku. I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. I was trying to remember if it was you or not who said it recently, but I know I've read it before that even Nat Turner, who they say was using biblical stuff to fuel his liberation, but he was actually using Igbo principles or something. Was that you who said that recently? But I know I've read it somewhere.
It wasn't me who said it recently, but it's true. He used African principles to bring the people together, and that's always been the basis of our people who decided the warriors, the rallying cry for our warriors to come out and gather and go out into battle. It's never been through the
movie. He was having what do you call
visions?
Visions using African stuff. He did put that, even though he at the beginning he had like a ritual, running to the ritual as a kid. So he did the Birth of a Nation, the one that just came out, alludes to that. Yes, it did.
Ogun, I respect you as an elder, all of you in here, because I'm fairly young in my sense, but I've dedicated a lot of time to psychology and studying this thing. And yes, I 100% agree with you with some of the stuff you have said. I 100% do agree with you. And I don't fault you, because there's a lot of pulpit pastors, a lot of pips who goes around telling people, such as Brother Polite and all these people, which is a disgrace to our community. I 100% agree with you. I'm not going to lie with you. And I'm just to piggyback up what you said. Yes, I agree with you. It's the warriors who does stuff, right? And speaking to Nat Turner as well, too, I go by the same philosophy, like the philosophy that Dr. Francis S. Wilson gave us about the religion, education, economics, war, politics, all that stuff would lead to our liberation. And there's a lot of stuff that could be said. But some of the stuff I'd rather not say over the phone, because you know how that stuff goes.
I got it.
But, okay, you got what I'm saying.
Yep.
You got what I'm saying. Yes, I'd rather not say so, because you become a target with certain things. But yes, I fully understand you, and I see how it's supposed to be done. The reason why I go back to the Bible, as I said, let me just put the Tanakh. And Islam is not part of Abrahamic faith. It has nothing to do with it. I know people say it, but it's a misconception. It is not. It's a sense of saying, I write a book, and then somebody comes down the pipe and write a book after it, and then it's considered part of my series. It is not the same, to be true. And when you read the Tanakh in its entirety, you have to read it with a lot of logic, a lot of economical sense and philosophy, and just pure reasoning to get the book. And most people don't get that concept. They read it, and they're reading in a sense of spirituality and don't understand what the book's called for. For our liberation, it's not going to be some mystical thing that's come and save us. No, we have to do it through economic gain. If you read the entirety of the book, every time these people were saved, our forefathers were saved in the book, it was either through some liberation, to some political agenda, to some economic ways. There's reason behind that, but most people then don't understand how that stuff is done. They read it, and they just read it as a face value without no comprehension in the book. And let's be honest, most of our people don't comprehend how society is built. They don't know how it stuff works. They want liberation, but they don't know how to get liberation. They think by marching down the street and pumping their fists, that equals liberation. That has nothing to do with it. And I guarantee, I'm assuming all you could agree from that one.
Okay, so I really appreciate your insight and the perspective that you have. Anything that you use for your liberation, let it be an instrument of your liberation, and let it be yours and yours alone. It's not the larger challenge is that we're not trying to go out and make converts, because there is a lot of transliteration that has happened. There's a lot of misinterpretation. And we have to get to the point where how you practice and serve the God that created you in your story, right, can't prohibit you from acknowledging that in this realm we have a common set of circumstances that binds us together, which puts us on the same side. Where you go when you die and what happens to you in the end, that's on you.
Can I just say this real quick? Number one, I'm really gonna have to push for the network to do this debate show, and I was thinking about it. I want it to be named something like friendly African debate show, something like that. I don't want it to be just a shouting match, but I think that debate show is coming up. It's going to be necessary. So I'd like y'all to hold some of those religious thoughts for that, more so, not to cut anyone off. Sean, I'm going to let you speak in a second before I get back to the paper. Second thing I want to address, Joni wants to join the on air. Joni, you got to listen to what I'm telling you. Hop on the Discord, like I was just talking to you on Discord in the general area. Go on the left-hand side, scroll down to where it says live show. And under live show, you're going to see on air. It's going to be glowing white. Hop in, just click on air. You're going to see a bunch of us in there. Haiti Toma, Revolutionary Matron, Kare, who's here? Welcome, Kare.
Hey, greetings, everyone.
Yes, Ogun is in here. So the same way Sean Jill just came and found his way in here, you can find your way in here too. I don't have time to do much more than just tell you that, right? Just go down the list of different categories. You're gonna come to the one that says live show, and right under that you're gonna see read first, waiting lists, on air. Jump in, just click on air, and you'll be in the live show. Sean, just give me 1 second. Kare, do you want to add something to this?
Just listening right now.
Okay, Sean.
Thank you, sir. So just to shorten my point, what I'm trying to make when I talk about wisdom has to be used in psychology in the book and actually use logical sense in the book. I'm going to give you 3 points of this, right? First point, to show how logical the book could be. I've talked to a lot of people, and they will say that, talk to a lot of feminists, because due to the nature of my job, when I talk to people all the time, they will say that the book is sexist in nature, right? Due to the book saying that women cannot be priests to certain stuff that they do. And when you actually understood the concept of why women could not be priests in the book, is because if a woman could be priest, she's not allowed to have kids. She couldn't have her period.
Okay. Are you still there?
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah.
I thought I was speaking. My apologies.
It's all right. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, what did you hear that I said? Did you hear anything at all?
The last thing you said was she couldn't be a priest because she had her period,
Yeah,
etc.
so they would say that it's sexist because she couldn't be a priest due to the fact that our lovely women have their cycles, and if she has her cycles, what woman would want to do certain things? Because I know my wife, when she's on her cycle, she didn't want me to touch her. So why would they allow someone to touch certain things while on her cycle, especially this is considered holy? That was the main reason why women.
All right, you cut out again. That was the reason why.
That was the reason why women could not be priests. It is not because the book is inherently sexist against women or they hate women. It's due to the constraint that they could.
Do you mind? I can share something with. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But Sean, real quick. The Bible says the same thing.
Which Bible? The Old Testament?
Yeah, the Old Testament is women can't preach, just like you just said.
No, they could not be high priests. It says in the book.
Can I? Do y'all mind if I share something?
Yeah, go ahead, Ogun.
Our people have been here for millions and millions and millions and millions of years, and they keep finding people older and older. First person being a woman. I'm a little confused because the written word just came around in maybe 10,000 years ago, 20,000, or whenever it came into existence. So I'm a little confused about books because the book is us. The Old and New Testament lies in us. we're literally talking about on this show old world African belief system versus a new world African reality that has happened. I do apologize. That has happened to us and being forced and brought into a new reality. And we bind it together as brothers and sisters to become a collective group of African people. So when people are telling me about books and everything, which all come right off of Kemet and right there on the walls and everything, I respect, and I'm going to, as an elder, I totally respect that process to listen to a young person. And you can use things, as Revolutionary Military say, for your own personal revolution. But we're here to deal with our people in a unified, African-centered, Pan-African perspective, so we can move forward and do something to change the condition of our people here and in future generations yet unborn.
Thank you for that. Sean Jill, Ogun, Azuliism, everyone who's here live with me. Matron, if you don't mind, are you doing a show tonight? Is the matron still with us? Are you doing a late show tonight?
You cut out. Yes, I am doing a late show tonight, y'all.
Can we have this discussion about the Abrahamic religions on that show tonight?
Yes, yeah. After, we got a little segment in the front, and then y'all can, but y'all can't keep me up for 12 hours.
No, I'm not doing 12 hours. But if we can have a little bit of that conversation during the matron show later tonight, this way I can finish reading this, and if you guys want to comment to the article that I'm reading, we could still, focus on why we weren't rescued. Joni has arrived. Joni, you want to say something first?
So can I say one last thing before I lose my point? I'm not trying to. My main point is not to try to harp on the Bible, and I understand where you're coming from, brother. The reason why I was trying to come from that point further is just to show you that I have a bit of understanding, because I know, coming from a level of academia, any old person come in and give the.
You cut out.
I want to show you I have logic and reason why I mentioned those things to show that I could deduce things from reading, which most people can't. Yes, we need to get that together. And if you look at the entirety of from all the laws in the Tanakh, if you look at it, such as the whoredom, the prostitution, and you look at what's happening in our community today, it's exactly what was told would have happened. Our young men and young women, with these people born out of the fatherless, the wedlock, and the fatherless kids.
You keep cutting in and out. Are you guys pushing a button to talk or something?
I am, sir.
Oh, you are? Okay. Yeah, I think your finger is coming off the button, so you cut out for a couple of seconds and then come back.
So all the stuff we see happen today with these children born out of wedlock, and we see continuously happen. That's a fact of whoredom, which we know would have happened. And like I said, not to get into too much detail with it, because this could go very, very deep. And like I said, using psychology and using especially what all our elders have told us, from Dr. Franciscus Waltzing all the way back, you see the same thing happen over and over again. So all I'm saying is that if we use the principle that was taught, which has never been proven wrong, at least to me from my education, it will work to bring us all back in one people.
All right, thank you for that. Joni is here, like I said. Joni, you want to say something? You're gonna have to unmute yourself, Joni. All right. While we wait for Joni to figure that out, let's continue. In Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, Dr. John Henry Clark wrote, the kind of slavery that the European was about to introduce into West Africa had no relationship to the African system of indentured servitude. In the African system, the slave was usually a loser in a local war. He was not enslaved separate from his family, and no slave was sent outside of Africa. Some slaves with talent rose to be kings in the very house in which they had been slaves. So that's kind of like the biblical stuff you'll read about. The word slave in West Africa had an entirely different meaning than it had when used by the Europeans. The slave in Africa did not lose her or his humanity. Some African chiefs or kings became corrupt and went into the slave trade because they wanted to. The Europeans sold firearms to one African group to either protect themselves or capture another group. The European gunpowder, rum, and cheap bric-a-brac, coming from the embryo of what will eventually become the European Industrial Revolution, was traded for slaves. In Capitalism and Slavery, Eric Williams explains the role that slavery played in building Europe's industrial capitalistic economy. As Dr. Clark explained, Africans who were involved in the slave trade were paid with bric-a-brac. There were some individual slave traders who became wealthy from the slave trade, but this also added to the chaos because these rogue slave traders were often able to acquire wealth and firearms from the slave trade, which allowed them to challenge the authority of the traditional rulers. The Congo Kingdom became a victim of this as the slave trade allowed many provinces to break away and declare their independence from the Congo. The quote-unquote mulatto middlemen who were involved in the slave trade also became very wealthy and powerful in West Africa. I just want to pause here and say this. For you to have mulatto middlemen, right, it means that your people was mixing up with these folks, particularly our women were mixing with these folks even before this bullshit started. And so it kind of shows me that once again, our African ancestors lacked a race consciousness. They lacked a continental consciousness, which is the genesis of all of our issues right now, right? Because you should have known better. And by the way, there's still women right now on the continent who are getting married to all kind of Asians and whatnot. And Asian dudes are becoming like kings of certain, is it kings or princes or something like that? But whatever they come, they're becoming prominent roles in a lot of African tribes right now on the continent, right? So this mulatto problem further shows, or as Dr. John Henry Clark would say, further shows the problem. Joni, hello.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please continue.
Okay. It further shows the problem that we had in Africa already. We were too cool and too friendly with folks, just to be downright honest about it. So the mulatto middlemen who were involved in the slave trade also became very wealthy and powerful in West Africa, and were sometimes able to establish themselves as rulers. Walter Rodney explained that oftentimes mulatto chiefs displayed a ruthlessness which must have stemmed from the fact that for the first generation or two, they were scarcely restrained by rules and customs. I'll pause here and I'll say hello to Joni again. Joni, welcome to the broadcast. Welcome to being on air with us. What do you want to add to the conversation of this paper so far?
Well, we'll have to go back a couple of steps where I kind of disagree with you on, I do agree with you on the slave cattle system, but not necessarily meaning that it was okay. I believe, I do agree with Ezeli, what he was talking about, that if African people were so spiritual, how come they couldn't see the devastation that was coming before them?
Oh, I'm in agreement with that as well. I mean, just on the basis of people being human, being from the same landmass that they were from, there should have been some consciousness towards that. And again, being spiritual. But again, this system of indentured servitude was built into the religion too. This wasn't outside of the religion. This was built into the religion. In fact, the reason why you could have risen up out of it and even become a general or married a chief's daughter or something is because it was a part of the benevolence that's within that religious system.
I understand that. That's what happened with Shaka Zulu. I think he was able to rise within rank in the military for him to become so successful. But he stayed on the continent. These people sold them away. And also, I could understand the first batch of slaves leaving the continent. But when the Caucasian or the people that held people in bondage kept on coming back to the slaves, how come the slave trader or the people who were selling them didn't say, hey, what's up? Like, we don't see these slaves. We don't see these people. Like, how could you just continually sell them and not worry about their whereabouts?
Well, like I said, I'm sorry, but like I said, when that ball starts rolling down a hill, when shit starts to roll down a hill, it's a problem to grab. And so what ended up happening, and in fact, as we read in this paper earlier, there were those chiefs who were starting to say, hey, you know, you're kind of overdoing it now. Where are all these people going? And they faced assassination. These Portuguese got ruthless. Once you let an entity get its claws in you, it's a wrap.
Hey, Coco, may I interject something?
Kari, go ahead.
It's not a good enough excuse for me, to tell you the truth.
I'm not trying to make excuses, but I am trying to be practical about what the situation was. Kari?
Yeah, we got to, just like you said, with these different institutions, what's going on now with the Chinese all over Africa, and they're trying to get rid of off campuses here, is this something called the Confucius Institutes. But I digress.
Same thing again. The same thing again. you know?
May I interject as well, too? Well, man, you got to understand, man. It's either, at the time, it was either them or you. When was happening. So most of them, they're not going to incriminate themselves, their families, and their kids.
Right.
So as much as they're Africans and their brothers, if someone come into your house and says, my kids are your kids, what would you choose?
Take Gunner. Take Gunner right now, as a matter of fact.
Haiti, kill them all. And then, like my ancestors did. My ancestors was able to sacrifice themselves and other people. So that I come from that genre. I don't come from a genre, sell people. I don't know, this discussion needs to be had because everybody, especially African Americans, they're very upset. They're upset because their people been sold. I'm not that upset because, it bothers me, but not that much, to tell you the truth, because I come from a generation of, a country of warriors, so it's...
No, but Joni, where did your people come from?
My people are from Haiti.
Where did the people in Haiti come from?
Some came from Africa, but my mother's people are original Tainos. So I'm mixed with Tainos, black.
Okay, so you're Taino then.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm gonna say this. What you said before, you read before, what the guy said, before we ask the white man for reparation, we have to ask the African. Yo, I don't disagree with that, bro. Because the Caucasians, they're supposed to do what they do. They're the enemy. After me and my brother fix our relationship, then we're going to go handle that right there. I actually, come to think of it, I understand why a lot of people might disagree with me on it. My brother...
Erzuli, before you go further, can I just interject and say one thing? Or ask a question. Was the European the enemy of the African before the slave trade began? And that's for others to jump in as well. Was the European at that time the African's enemy?
No,
yeah, I believe they've been the enemy. They've been the enemy. They are our opposition. They've been the enemy.
I don't feel all Caucasian people are our enemies, to tell you the truth. I believe that they believe in themselves. It's just that we don't believe in ourselves. I mean, look what's happening in my own country. We sell out our own. It's a culture of selling out our own. And I'm sorry you guys don't agree with, but you know, the country I come from, it's very corrupt, and it's our own people selling out our people. Of course, we're gonna deal with them, but I think.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. If you take 5 pit bulls, you starve them to death. You starve them to death. Then you throw a stick in there. What do you think is gonna happen with the people, with the pit bulls?
Humans and animals are two different things. Like
no, they're not. No, they're not. They're the same.
We have consciousness.
No,
we have consciousness.
humans are animals at the base of it, though.
Oh, come on.
What I'm saying.
We have
what I'm saying.
To say yes or no.
Junior, listen to what I'm saying. When you're hungry, when you've been starved, you take. If you're not hungry, you might not do that. You be like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm not fighting my brother for this. But when you're hungry, most people. I'm not saying they got some people who rise above their instinct, but most people will do that. So in Haiti, all of this is going on. The people that have failed the group of people are the politicians. The people are the people. Go ahead. Yeah.
Man, to check as well, man. So
you can't equate us to animals because it's a different thing. Like we have the ability to reason. Animals don't.
As a matter of fact, you're worse than animals because animals can't read. Let me tell you, a lion, if he's full, and the antelope pass by, he's not gonna kill it. A human could have 3 houses and he still want to destroy the other house and make his own. As a matter of fact, you worse.
No, if
also, may I say something about that? What he just says? Look what the army of the United States did when they went onto the plains and they were fighting against the Indians, and they shot and killed all the buffaloes to starve the other side. Animals would never do that.
Facts.
Okay, man, to check. So your question, ma'am, is more coming from a philosophical question, a psychological question of whether what's right from wrong. And that's a morality question, if you ask me. And morality is based on where you come from. Truth be told, a story could be told anyways as to why somebody's fighting for something. And if you really look at this, yes, from your perspective, it's messed up. But you got to remember, from a colonizer to who wants to be conquered, it's 2 different stories. If you take the Africans who were selling other Africans, the first question you're going to ask them is that did they know the situation that they would get into? Most of them did not know what awaits them, right?
Right, that's my point.
What they were given to them, it was saying that, hey, like I said earlier, it's my kids or your kids. So any sensible person at that time, I know it's not right. I'm never saying that's right. That's why I said this comes a morality question. Any person would say, I'd rather give somebody else's kid than my own. That person might not be good, but it's self-preservation of your own children. That is what took place. They armed some of the Africans with other weapons to fight against the other Africans. Remember, they had tribalism as well. People had prisoners of wars. If you talk about military, and I've served my time as well too, what you might consider right might not be right for me in the military. Or what you might consider wrong might be right. I would shoot a kid to save certain people if it comes to the military. But like I said, you would say it is wrong, right? It's subjective what happens. And yes, from Haiti,
this whole conversation is subjective. My input is when the first batch of slaves were disbarred, right? No one asked the question. You can't tell me that no one knew what was happening. And I do understand the slave cattle system, but this is not what happened here. The gate of no return. Nobody ever came back. When we talk about the slave system, it stayed on the continent of Africa. It didn't go to other different countries,
True, ma'am. But again, you gotta remember, how are they supposed to know such a thing would have happened? What we went through is like nothing ever before. Never happened before. This is the first time in history we've ever treated like cattle.
I'm so sorry, sir. The Arab slave was worse than what happened during the slave Atlantic trades, because the Arabs, what they did was they concubined the black women and they intermixed with them, and then the men, they turned them into like transgenders. They cut off their testicles. Yeah, eunuchs. Yeah. So they were like the first trans. So that was worse because those people never came back and they never were able to pop.
That was on East Africa, though.
So that was like the first genocide. So no.
That was East Africa, though.
The tribe,
and what's your point of that?
Africa. I understand the continent of Africa, everybody moves around. Like, let me give you an example. The people that are in Rwanda are not native to Rwanda. They only been there for 100 years. The really the small
You're breaking up, but
from that area. Because people from Ethiopia moved down and West Africans moved up and then they formed Rwanda. That's what I believe. So when you say only East Africa, there was Africa is a tribal, not the they move around a lot. It's now that they're like different countries. They don't move all together. So when you say, oh, it only happened in East Africa, that's not true.
You referring to the trans-Sahara slave trade, or the transatlantic slave trade, or the intra-African slave trade, or the intra-Arab Asian slave trade? There were a variety of different processes that were going on a continent that became known as Africa. Before these countries actually came into existence, which are geopolitical countries, you have to look at the landmass from an ancient, recent time, modern, midterm, and then you got to look at what has happened in the last 500 to 600 years, because you're talking about a different landmass. Then you're talking about the African identity as if everyone in that particular region of the world, which was literally the center of the earth, was in total agreement to a particular process. And studying those paths of migration and studying the paths of how these high cultures would develop, you can see certain patterns. You can see the influx, because if you look at the Red Sea, it's right there. You literally, that's Northeast Africa. You can literally walk right on in and walk right back on out. So we have to ask several questions. And I know you said that you were from the Republic of Haiti, my brothers and sisters. So I give salute to you. And I have a lot of respect. The question then is, what was that country called, that landmass called 10,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago?
What country were you talking about?
I'm talking about the Republic or the Empire of Haiti. What was it called 10,000 years ago? What was it called 100,000 years ago? What was it called 1,000,000 years ago?
I don't know how we got to Haiti, but it was consist of 5 tribes. But it wasn't.
Listen to my time frame. Listen to my time frame. What was it called 1,000,000 years ago?
I don't know how you equating this to the African slave ship. There wasn't. I don't know.
I got a point that I'm going to.
You have to wait for him to. You have to allow him to build a point. Let's get to the point, Ogun.
Okay, I'm saying we're talking about an identity. An African identity was forged because you had a loose confederation of different high cultures that were set up. Then you have to then break down who these group of people that we're talking about. And in most cases, these people did not identify and have never identified themselves as African people. They identified themselves as their ethnic, tribal nation. And so a reason why I asked that question, because when we talk about nationalities, these nationalities that we talk about didn't exist. Because centrally, Africa was the center of every existence, and every high culture, every writing system that was ever built was happened on that landmass by those diverse group of people until they decided to do whatever they need to do. And other people, they'll decide to allow other people in. This is not the first time we've been dealing with this issue. It's just a different dynamic of the pain and suffering that has happened to force this identity that we now call African. Africans in Haiti, Africans in Jamaica, Africans in the Bahamas, Africans in the United States, Africans in Guyana, Africans in Ghana, Africans in Nigeria, Africans in Tanzania, Africans in West Papua New Guinea, Africans in Suriname, and these variety of different places that we're currently or as a result of a traumatic event called a mafia that happens. And that's what I was just sharing. Now, I'm finished.
May I piggyback off of Goon? Yes, brother. Ma'am, I agree with him, like he's saying, and I kind of thought you kind of confusing the two as well too.
Yes.
But I did get your point, what you're trying to say. I completely get what you were saying. But as he said, remember, Africa, we didn't develop this nationality, this identity of Africanness or oneness until we went through what we did. Every country or every people was considered themselves back then. We didn't have this sense of race to what we had today. That was something that was new to the entirety of the world. And in honest truth, it was. You know, but back to the Arab, you were saying the Arab trade slave. Remember, Africans themselves, if you technically want to speak in that term, participated in the very trade slave we're talking about. Because as I mentioned earlier, when you go back in history and you learn of how Arabia and the Arabs came to be and all these wars coming from the Persians all the way to the Russians, Africa played an instrumental role. I'm talking about the country itself, from all different diverse we were. They played an instrumental role from East Africa to West Africa, how it took place. Stuff like the Rock of Gibraltar and all these places had African influence on all of them. So when you're saying about the trade slave, yes, Africans, in a sense we call it today, was part of it, but not in a whole sense, if you get what I'm trying to say, as an identity.
It makes sense, yeah. Let me read some comments. Pro-Black Perspective is here, y'all. Say what's up to the Pro-Black Perspective. He said 13 yes votes. I guess he's talking to the poll I posted up there. Yeah, so StreamYard might be the way I go in the future. Huh?
You're fading in and out.
Am I fading in and out? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right. What I was saying, the Pro-Black Perspective is here. A pretty monotheism's family of dragon tamers is here. Saying, as an Afro-Mexican being a descendant, I appreciate you having these live streams in regards to these topics. Azteca and Mayan were highly melanated people, but somehow they saw Hernan Cortez as a god. For generations, melanated and brown people have seen the pale skin as godly. It needs to stop. KW Dawn 7 says Urugu has been the enemy since their inception. So that KW Dawn 7's comment kind of recenters us again back to the paper and to the question I had earlier, which is, if this European was the enemy at that time, why didn't our ancestors on the continent take them out at first sight? So to me, it seems like, aside from Carthage that happened, it seemed to me that Africans didn't see them as enemies per se, but at the same time, they were strangers, absolutely, and they shouldn't have, cut deals or work with them, in my humble opinion. What else was said here? A bunch of stuff back and forth. The learning curve with the Revolution Major says we need to have our thinkers. That means you, all of us. I think she's talking to the Pro-Black Perspective. Let me continue with the reading so I can finish it. Now, I'm going to tell y'all something that's interesting. This article, according to Medium, this article says that Medium says this article takes 9 minutes to read. I've been here now 2 hours and 15 minutes. Just saying, right? The slave trade placed tremendous stress on African societies. There was the ever-present fear of being kidnapped and taken away. No one, including the family members of the ruling class, were safe from the slave trade. In fact, even the slave traders themselves were not safe. There is the example of Daaga, a slave trader who was captured and taken to Trinidad, where he led a rebellion. For centuries, the slave trade was an unstoppable force in Africa that was beyond the power of any one ruler or one kingdom to completely stop. So very often, rulers were forced to make compromises with the Europeans, kind of what our boy Sean was talking about here. Nzinga was one such ruler. She fought the Portuguese for decades, but she was never able to successfully defeat them. So she was forced to compromise with them. As cruel as this may seem, the decision many African rulers were faced with was protecting their own people at the expense of other ethnic groups and other kingdoms. That sounds familiar, correct? One of the factors that contributed to the decline of the Oyo Empire were internal disputes about whether or not Oyo should involve itself in the slave trade. This was a dilemma which many African rulers were confronted with. Involvement in the slave trade meant access to European goods, especially firearms. On the other hand, slave raiding was expensive and costly and directed energy away from more productive endeavors. Yet in many cases, slave raiding was necessary for survival because Europeans would often arm one ethnic group against another ethnic group. That's what happens when you let that ball roll. Now you're gonna have groups trying to survive, and so they're gonna be on the bullshit now too. That's what happens when you let one thing start rolling. To continue, people like O'Shea, who think that Africans should be made to pay reparations for their role in the slave trade, seem oblivious to how devastating the slave trade was for Africa. Scholars such as Walter Rodney and Eric Williams have demonstrated that the slave trade and colonialism contributed greatly to the rise of the European capitalist economy. Someone needs to mute their mic, please. The slave trade and colonialism also underdeveloped Africa and has limited Africa's potential. President Sékou Touré of Guinea stated, quote, the relation between the degree of destruction, the relation between the degree of destitution of peoples of Africa and the length and nature of the exploitation they had to endure is evident. Africa remains marked by the crimes of the slave traders. Up to now, her potentialities are restricted by underpopulation, end of quote. The main focus on this particular article is not the impact of the slave trade on Africa, but I mention this to give the reader some idea of how devastating and chaotic the slave trade was for Africans. Most African kingdoms struggled just to survive the onslaught brought about by the slave trade. So this idea that African kingdoms were in a position to sail to the Americas to rescue the millions who were enslaved on the other side of the world is not an idea that is based on reality. Aside from the fact that many Africans did not even know about the slave plantations in the Americas, the second thing to keep in mind is that Africans simply did not have the capacity to travel to America and rescue those who were captive. Abu Bakr II is well known for abdicating the throne of Mali to explore the Atlantic Ocean. What became of him after is unknown. Some scholars like Ivan van Sertima and Gassau Diawara have argued that Abu Bakr did successfully arrive in the Americas, but Abu Bakr never returned home. So at best, Africans could have only hoped for a successful one-way trip to America. Keep in mind that Abu Bakr had previously sent a fleet of boats to explore the ocean, and only one boat returned. So Abu Bakr himself was likely aware that the journey he was undertaking was a very dangerous one. Apart from Mali, there is no evidence that any other West African state even attempted such a vast exploration of the Atlantic Ocean. Africans did not have naval fleets, and he highlights this. Africans certainly did not have anything that could withstand the naval powers of the Spanish Armada or the British fleet, which defeated the Spanish Armada. African boats were able to navigate rivers such as the Niger River, but there simply was never any reason for African nations to build up strong naval capabilities or establishing seafaring capabilities. Africans were not looking for a new trade route like Christopher Columbus was when he arrived in the Caribbean. Kingdoms such as Mali and Songhai were so wealthy that foreigners came to those kingdoms to trade, not the other way around. Africans were also not driven by a desire for global conquest or colonization as Europeans have been. So the factors that drove Europeans to develop the seafaring capabilities which allowed Europeans to engage in the transatlantic slave trade did not exist in Africa at the time. In short, Africa was simply not prepared for the onslaught of the European conquest. So I'm going to pause here and allow folks to comment on what was just said. Does anyone on the Discord want to add a comment to what was just said? Go ahead.
Yes, sir, and great reading, sir. And everything you're saying is right from the history books that I've read myself. I dedicated time to studying this stuff. And to your point as well, too, there's no way for those Africans, as you said, to fight against them because they got weapons and everything. If you understand Europe history during that time, Europe was in constant conflict. And any nation, as you know how it goes in today's day, if any nation is in constant conflict, what develops? Technology develops to fight wars. Africa was not in that state to the war that they fought. Europe had no land. If you go back, especially go to Great Britain, North Europe is not a place where you could farm. That's why they was always fighting one another. So when they branched out, they were going for the sense of conquest. That's what they did. So the technology developed, and just to simply put it, we had no chance. So there's no way for them to fight against.
Right. Matron, you wanted to add something?
Nope.
Okay.
But this is super lit. Koku, these papers are fire.
Thank you.
I have something to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank the young brother Sean, and I want to thank Joan for joining the Discord. And I'm listening to, and I'm very grateful to listen to the vast amount of information and resources that we have an opportunity to listen to. So I thank for that commentary and for joining the Discord and tuning into the Bitter Medicine podcast on the WKW. Y'all gotta help me out because I just
KWAZ Radio. KWAZ Radio.
KWAZ Radio. I just want to say it's a fantastic paper, and I'm enjoying every moment of it. So I didn't want the young folks that's on here. I'm listening to your thoughts and your opinions, and we greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, it's all love. Thanks to Joni and Sean for joining. Gunnar, you wanted to say something?
Can I speak?
Yeah.
This is the thing where I'm rejecting a lot of this. The thing you just said, Africans didn't have naval ship. So if we were the creator, if we were the creator of everything, Egypt, great. How the hell the African could not create naval ship? Where did these European get the smarts and the technology to do that? If we were the cradle of civilization, I reject that part of the article. I reject all of that because I don't believe this. Because if Africans don't, or Africans didn't think about war, didn't think about. So hold up. So Europeans, where they had no fruits, no food, kept fighting. Where did they find the wood to build all those ships? We have also. Hold up, all these things.
Before we interject and talk about the whole geographic of Africa, I'd like to just interject when you talk about slavery. Let's go to 1950 when what's his name? Fidel went to help free Africa.
I don't believe in none of those things, man. But go ahead.
That's why I didn't say nothing. That's why I was like, I'm just enjoying the show because we gonna talk about it after dark. We got Koku said the paper take 9 minutes to get through. We got after dark, y'all.
Yeah, we'll continue this conversation on the after dark. I'm gonna finish the paper. Joni, I want to give you a chance to finish your thought. If you guys are using the push to talk function, you got to make sure you keep your finger on the button, else you're gonna cut out. Joni?
Oh, that's why I keep on cutting out. So I'd like to piggyback off what the brother just said about if we were all so almighty, Africa was the first civilization. I even heard that Africa used to travel to Mexico to the what was it, the Mayans, and they used to trade with them. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So if this Piper said that they never had ships, how could people from Africa travel all the way to Latin America? So some of these things don't make sense.
No, Joni. The paper saying that they didn't have the type of ships that could compete against the naval ships that these Europeans have. That's the difference. The idea is that the African came across here, and I've heard this in several different resources. Africans were able to come to the Americas in small amounts, in small groups, on smaller vessels, but nothing that could go up against these ships, and these ships with their armaments and all that kind of stuff. Go ahead.
You know, when we speak like that, this makes us really look bad. I'm with you. We had these little canoes because, as we say, there's a current that runs from West Africa. If you just put your boat on there,
straight across,
just guide you there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the ancestors knew that. They knew all of this. They could navigate the earth without putting motor. But you mean to tell me, Africans? That looks bad on us.
Well, I mean, let's be real, and Sean said it too.
May I answer him, sir?
Yeah. 1 second. Why would we have these big ships right, that could transport all these human bodies. We didn't have gunpowder, so how would we have armaments on these ships? I think that's the point of the paper. Sean, go ahead.
Mr. Toma, again, my specialty is in psychology, and
Wait,
no offense to you.
I'm so sorry. Before you talk about that, I was going to make a point about Fidel when he went into Africa. When Fidel went into Africa to liberate parts of Africa, I forgot his partner in crime that died. He went into the Congo.
Che Guevara.
Che Guevara went into Congo to arm the people there. He said that they was. He said it was like they couldn't he couldn't train them. Like I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I don't. It kind of bothers me when we don't like to really say what happened. You know, that some of our people sold us into slavery. I understand it wasn't all of us, but there was a tribe of people that were intermingling. I mean, not even intermingling, because I'm a mixed race, so it's not a big thing. But there were a tribe of people that had their hands dirty, just like the Uish, which, you know, had a tribal people that had their hands dirty, and there was a trial to trial those people. So I mean, if we're gonna move forward, I mean, we have to take that stance. It's not like, oh, they didn't know, somebody knew.
Joni, it sounds a little bit like you want to say Africans were just inferior.
You kind of broke up. Can you repeat it?
I said it sounds like you want to say that Africans were just inferior.
You're breaking up, Goku.
I think I'm gonna have to get off this line and go on YouTube. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go off this line and go on YouTube.
I don't know why I'm breaking up. I said it seems like you think Africans were inferior.
I wouldn't say to that, but I would like to say that there was some hands that was dirty. Like, and I think a lot of people just don't want to say that some of our ancestors sold us into slavery, and I don't know how can we rectify that, but it's a hurt that's centuries old, right?
But before we derail and go off point, we'd have to be realistic here. Like I said, I study psychology. That's my forte. All right. And Mr. Toma and Ms. Joni, there's a thing sometimes called you have to accept reality for what reality really is. And a lot of us don't have that. A lot of us, for some strange reason, fail at doing that. Yes, you got to admit, you have to sometimes admit that you're inferior to certain things. And I know it's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but you must admit certain things. Africans did not do it.
Okay. This is not my platform, but I do have to. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, I forgot. Right after, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no. Finish your thought, matron.
You know, one of the things that I keep hearing you say, like, we're having a conversation to evolve thought, and you're continuing to espouse your credentials, which are fine when you initiate contact. And you know, I respect whatever ideological framework you come from, but your perspective is not made more valid by the fact that you study psychology. Nothing that you've studied and nothing that you've done other than your presence here makes your perspective more valid. Additionally, I can respect the fact that you want to try to go down this line of Africans being inferior, but you're not even tapping into what original people cosmology is in regards to all life is sacred. So I reject some of the perspectives that you're coming from. I didn't mean to cut you off like that, but like, when this talk of Africans largely being inferior without taking into consideration some of the information we have about indigenous' sacredness of life kind of sort of dismisses the reality of who we are. But I do agree that the perversion and the mixing of certain things does complicate the situation, and we need to address that. But I didn't mean to cut you off. I got a little too comfortable. I apologize, Coco. I apologize, Sean. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful, but I wanted to interject those two things.
Okay, ma'am. Cool. And I understand your point, ma'am. And my apologies if I keep mentioning my credential. I won't again. But I only did it is not to be boastful, right? Just to prove the point. And with that being said, ma'am, I disagree with you that. And I think as people, sorry, and I think as people, we have to admit sometimes that when we're wrong, not wrong, but that we can't do certain things. I think it's a part of being realistic with life. And as for the Africans, as you were saying, there is no way for them to fight against the Europeans because, again, we didn't have the technology and the way to fight. It would be a losing fight. That's realistic, and that's part of life. I'm not sure if it's a good answer people like to hear, but it is the fact and reality. It's like saying today, why didn't the Africans invent the nuclear bomb? Since they were so technologically advanced above everybody else. But we did not, did we? So with me just saying that, we just have to be realistic with stuff. It's the same thing happens with our Black community today. We always like to have the raha, we're the best, our women are queens, we was kings, but when it comes to taking responsibility, we don't do it. We have to humble ourselves to a certain degree so that we can move forward, and that's just my perspective of it. So if I say we were inferior, we was at that time.
I actually agree. I actually agree with that. I'm sorry, Ogun. I'll let Ogun speak next, and then I'm going to continue and finish the paper. We can continue this conversation later, but I actually agree with that. Listen, if we weren't up to par with something, we just weren't up to par. You know, if I can't jump and touch a roof 13 feet high, I just can't do it, and it's cool. You know what I mean, Ogun?
Yeah, I actually like that what you just said, Koku, versus the process of saying someone's inferior. We just weren't up to par. We lost a war. It happens.
Absolutely, yes.
We made mistakes in the process. So have every other group of people. But that doesn't last forever. You just have to be very careful about the narrative that you put out there in the public domain, because when you start saying that, then you're really not too far from repeating the same mistakes that we're here holding our ancestors accountable for. Because we're going to put them same shackles on our brains, and then them shackles from the brain and the spiritual shackles, and then it'll be physical shackles, and we will go through the same process of destroying our people wholesale. So in that process, we have to be very careful. It was a war. We lost. It's okay. The question is, after you lose the war, what do you do?
Rebuild. Mchaka's in the room saying, what's good on African time, but we in here. Well, you barely in here. You barely in here, as a matter of fact. But thanks for coming through anyway. And Chaka says, quote, I'm a PhD. If you know, you know, LOL. Yeah, that's that Boyce Watkins bullshit. I'm a very smart guy. I have a PhD, and shut your dumb ass up, Boyce Watkins. But anyway, I digress. Let me finish this paper, guys. All right. We could continue this later on the Matron show, but I have to say, I have to echo what was said earlier. I really like Joni finally joining. Joni was supposed to be my co-host one time ago, by the way, but I like that Joni joined, and I like what Sightlock is saying as well. So I hope to see you guys more regularly in the future on all these platforms, not just my show, but on all the platforms that we have here as well. To continue, the slave trade was not only horrible for those who were captured and sold, it was a very devastating and traumatic experience for the ones who escaped being captured. The point should be understood because as African Americans, West Indians, and Africans, we have all been victimized by the slave trade. As Lansine Kaba explained, the legacy of the Atlantic slave trade has diminished the dignity of every Black person, regardless of his or her intrinsic qualities. Thus, all Black rulers, traders, and war captives alike became victims or potential victims. And that's the end of the paper. Let me just shout out, Dwayne is the author of several books on the history and experiences of African people, both on the continent and in the diaspora. His books are available through Amazon. You can also follow Dwayne on Facebook, on Twitter. Like I said, if you follow most of us on KWAZ Radio, we are linked to Dwayne Wong on Twitter, so you too can follow him. That's the end of the paper. For you guys who are on with me, and you guys in the chat room as well, what is your feelings about this paper tonight? Just give me a few words on your feelings. In fact, let me go down the line. I'll call on people to give me a few words. First one is Erzulism.
Well, about the paper, I like I said, I enjoyed the paper. I feel that this a lot of time, a lot of people who do the research are getting the research from the enemy, the supposedly enemy, and they were just regurgitating it. And I felt some of the stuff that he said I disagree with, and I refuse to believe. And I understand what they said. When you took an L, just take the L. But I refuse to believe that people who built pyramids, people who built pyramids in South America, and people who built pyramids in Africa couldn't be naval ship.
A pyramid and a gun is two different things, though. And furthermore,
a pyramid,
does everyone know everything?
But in order for you to build something, okay, we didn't just build the motorcycle. We had a bicycle. We didn't just build an airplane.
Who's we?
Meaning that the people, okay, Elon Musk didn't just build an electric car. There had to be the car before that. There had to be a bicycle before that. So how do you go from a fire stick to projectile? What's the missing link? I'm not gonna hear you and take that.
So how come Africans didn't build a car? They built chariots. They built chariots. Why didn't go and build a car?
What I'm saying, how do you go from a fire stick? How you go from arrows to creating a gunpowder and then to creating projectile? So we don't see there's a missing link. You don't just go from arrow, boom, you skip the arrow, then you go to gunpowder or to fireworks, then boom, gunpowder.
But Gunner,
it could just be hold up, Evangelism. It could just be my ego. I can't take that.
Yeah, it's your ego because Gunner. I'm sorry, Erzulism. Sorry. The reality of it is this: if people are, if there's a people who are steadily warring, guess what they're doing work in? They're doing work in weapon creation. That's what this science is going to be based around. In fact, if you look at the U.S. right now, a lot of the technology that we get comes out of weapons building.
The iPhone.
Rockets going in space. All that stuff comes from weapons study. And so, all right, Gunner. We'll hear the rest of what you have to say on the next show. Let me go to the next speaker because you're speaking from an ego stance, and we gotta speak from a reality stance. Africans couldn't have built every goddamn thing. That's just the reality. The focuses were different, right? They didn't come across gunpowder first, so the Asians came across it, gave that shit to the Europeans, and they weaponized it. Because that's what they do. They do research in weapons, in weaponry, military science, etc. Joni, you're here. Give us a few words on your feelings about the paper.
Okay, I thought you was gonna pick someone else. I was still gathering my thoughts. I believe if Africa would have united as a continent, we would be able to beat them. I think there was a saying that Shaka Zulu, he was able to unite. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Oh, okay. So I think if the tribals those different chiefs would have united instead of some of them going with the enemy, we wouldn't be here. And I listened to this other gentleman called Saragali. He's on Instagram. He said that the slave Atlantic trades took us back 1,400 years, and it might take us another 1,400 years to get back to our place among this world. So it's going to be a long ride, you know?
It's a long ride back. You know, the pro-black perspective made a point that I forgot about too. I absolutely forgot about this group. And part of the reason why I forgot about the group is because I have a little bit of disrespect for them. But the Moors are the missing link. Right? That's a good point. Thanks for that pro-black perspective. Kare, you have anything you want to say about this paper and the contents of the paper?
I kind of came in late. I came in an hour in, but only thing I can say is like it's a great paper to listen. I didn't say much. I just gotta listen. It's just deep and heavy hitting.
Thank you. The Revolutionary Matron, my sister on KWAZ radio. You know, I haven't done one KWAZ radio station break this whole time. But Matron, do you have something you want to add to this? To comment about this paper?
I just think that content like this can be helpful in healing the pain, like just in evolving and furthering the discussion so that we can get to a point where people that are hurt or that are trying to rationalize a reality we don't control yet, process through to get to a point of wholeness. So papers like this, because it gives you an opportunity to explain away some things so that you can do what you need to do. And you're either going to allow that to happen or you're going to evolve the conversation like we're going to do later on tonight.
Thank you. And by the way, I just want to be clear. I'm not trying to diss Azuliism or anything. I'm just saying that we can't just pound against this wall of ego to say, how is it possible we didn't do all the things? That's just not realistic. Like, some of the smartest dudes can't do some basic shit. It's just not what it is. Sidelock? You got to keep your finger on that button.
My apologies. I don't have much to say, sir, but it's an excellent paper, and just that humility is one of the biggest things we need.
Well stated. Ogun.
When you have all of the resources on, it was a great paper, great podcast, great commentary. You should have about 3,000 likes when the rebroadcast comes. When you have everything on a continent, you are not thinking about anything else. You're living in the Eden, the paradise. So you're not preparing for all the other stuff. Our continent wasn't forged in a whole bunch of wars in ancient times. So it wasn't until these invasions are being invited in that we had to start thinking about a variety of different weaponry. And you could say that's both good and bad, but for the most part, we were very peaceful people. We had to learn the art of war, and when we learned that art of war and went to the battle, we created the Republic of Haiti. When you have everything on a continent. Did I go out?
No, someone came in and the pro-black perspective came in, I think, and his mic wasn't muted or something. The pro-black perspective is here. What did you think of the paper, my friend?
Oh yeah, you are cutting out.
Am I cutting out?
Yeah, it sounds like it. But I don't want to interrupt anybody.
No, Ogun was done. I'm asking you now, what were your thoughts on the paper?
That more thing. So I think a lot of us, what happens is that we get the wrong historiography. And because we get the wrong historiography, we come to the wrong conclusion, right? So what happens in this, when we say Africans invented things, a lot of times we're talking about the Nile Valley civilization and the civilizations before that and the civilizations around that. But what happens after the Greeks take it over and the Romans and then the Arabs is that the Arabs now possess this technology. These Arabs now, in around 700, they go and they invade all of Northern Africa and some of Southern Europe, and they keep this technology among them. They use this technology too against Wazungu, and they're the ones who actually invent the cannons and the guns and so forth. But what happens is that now that they are in Southern Europe for 700 years, actually enslaving Europeans, they eventually, after 700 years of war, they're defeated, they're pushed out and pushed back, but the technology remains, right? So this is where these ships and boats come into play, right? So the Moors had these ships, the Moors had these trading routes, the Moors had this, so on and so forth, and then the Moors were enslaving people, and Wazungu, the Europeans, just take over this enterprise, but it's already ready made and handed out to them. Now they eventually develop it themselves, but this is where you get this, oh yeah, they were backwards and blah blah blah, but then they just suddenly get possession of that technology, and it would be like parallel to, let's say America were to fall, and then let's say Turkey, that's a random country. Turkey takes over parts of America. Now it will have possession of America's technology. And if you fast forward 200 years into the future, Turkey will be a pretty advanced nation, out of nowhere. And whereas people might say, hey, how could the Turkeys have been so backwards if they, how can they be backwards if they possess all the technology now? Well, you just took over America. So the Moors, so the Arabs did take over Egypt, did get all that knowledge, and they preserved it pretty well. Some other groups did also preserve it pretty well, but a lot of us outside of Africa, a lot of us or outside of the Nile Valley, who might have been refugees in the Nile Valley or might have just not been involved in the Nile Valley, we would not have also taken those things or all of those things. Now, there is evidence that there are some groups in Africa that are descended from people in the Nile Valley. Like there are people in Kenya who can still write Meta Neter to this day. And there's a lot of our culture is possessed from that. But to say that we perfectly preserved the Nile Valley is not realistic. So that's I just wanted to add that. But of course, Dwayne Wong, like you said, we're all connected. So he's a good brother.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the Dogon people knew about the Sirius star before the European did. So now you're gonna tell me that we couldn't create that technology. The Dogon people. That's all I have to say.
Just to clarify, the gunpowder thing was more or less a Moorish invention. So the Dogon people are descended from they're likely descended from the ancient Egyptians, but they are likely a breakaway and likely like a priesthood that might have been more on like a spiritual sense than, say, weapons manufacturing. But it is important to note that there is this thing called Greek fire. So there is a history of these sort of weapons from a long time past. But again, the Moors are realistically the ones who create the cannon technology. The Moors are Africans and Arabs. But what happens is after, like if you do the timeline, this is something that I think people should basically, understand, is that the Moors are kicked out of Europe in 1491. Columbus discovers America in 1492, taking a familiar path with a Moorish guide from West Africa. And not just that, the other thing about this story that's really critical is, that Portugal is the leading power and the leading naval power after 1492.
Yeah.
Right? So Portugal is the people who introduced the slave trade deep into Africa. And it's just no coincidence that it's Portugal and not England. England comes later, and England actually only gets that power they could only challenge Portugal after, Portugal and Spain after the defeat of the Spanish Armada, which was just a chance occasion. But the reality is that no, Wazungu actually didn't discover this technology. But the thing with Wazungu is that they're not going to play the victim narrative, and they're not going to tell the true story. They're just going to try to make themselves sound better, and they should. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. So that's another thing that we shouldn't really be complaining about our people wanting to sound better. Although it's not even that we want to sound better, but all the same, it's like Wazungu doesn't tell you about 700 years of the Moors. You know?
Right.
He doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They never talk about it, actually. They never speak about it at all. Does anyone else have any last words before I sign off?
It's a perspective. That was well said, sir. That was well said, sir.
Say what?
I was saying, thank you, Mr. Perspective. That was well said, especially the Rock of Gibraltar, if you heard about that too, where the Black Moors did. And it's funny, if you look into history, when you realize that as soon as they took back control, then of course the Pope instituted, the okay to go into slavery, because as Mr. Perspective stated about us ruling Spain for a good decent, was 700 years, if I remember correctly, if my memory serves correct. Then out of nowhere, the Pope sanctioned the slavery, I guess against whom, of course, because they had a grudge as well too against our people during that time. But like I said, that's history's history.
Well, with that said, I want to thank all of you guys for jumping on the Discord tonight. For some reason, things were a little bit choppy, I think, with the Discord, but we're going to probably start using that StreamYard's software in the future, which I think is a little bit smoother. I'll be working on that in the next day or two. Want to shout out everyone who was here. Ogun was here. KW Don 7, Kevin Carre, the Pro Black Perspective was here. The Revolutionary Matron was here. M. Chaka was late, but he was here. Dragon Tamers was here. Erzuliism was here, of course. Joni R was here. Who else? Sightlock was here, of course. And if I missed anyone, which I don't think, NYC Beauties was here. If I missed anyone else from earlier, I do apologize, but I think this was a good reading. I think it gives us something to think about. And if you guys, whose playback is that? Someone has to mute their mic. So if you want to continue for a little while, this conversation, the matron will be on tonight at midnight. I'll be there for a little while. I'm sure some of you will be there for a little while. We can have some more of this conversation going on there, not to interrupt what she's got going on. So again, I want to thank you guys for coming through. I'll be back again on Saturday with the Shoot the Breeze. If you're on the Discord, you can find a channel for posting Shoot the Breeze topics. Post some topics you'd like to hear us discuss on the Shoot the Breeze. But if you don't know what Shoot the Breeze is where we just come through, talk about certain topics that folks want to have a further understanding on. They post those topics on the Discord, and we just talk about them for a little bit on a Saturday night. So Saturday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, come through. Thank you guys again for being here. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.